world of true crime, few names invoke as much horror as Ed Gein, a man whose crimes inspired countless films, books, and a chilling legacy. But behind the infamous persona of the Butcher of Plainfield, there lies a deeply disturbed individual whose actions blurred the line between madness and evil. Born on August 27, 1906, in La Crosse, Wisconsin, Ed Gein grew up in a small, isolated farmstead. The Gein family, known for their extreme religiosity, and their home was a place of severe repression. His father, George, was an alcoholic who was virtually absent from Ed's life, leaving the boy and his brother Henry under the control of their domineering mother, Augusta. Augusta, a fanatical Christian, instilled in her children a twisted view of the world, one that denounced women, seeing them as evil and the cause of sin. She kept Ed close, sheltering him from the outside world. But the effects of isolation, a toxic upbringing, and a growing fascination with death would eventually transform Ed Gein into one of the most notorious figures in American history. Throughout the years, Ed was described as quiet, introverted, and socially awkward. While his brother Henry was outgoing, Ed preferred the company of his mother. But by 1944, when Ed was in his late 30s, tragedy struck. His brother Henry died under suspicious circumstances while fighting a brush fire on the Gein property. This fire occurred on May 16th. Authorities were never able to fully investigate the death, but many believe Ed was involved, though there was no concrete evidence. However, the county's coroner's office did confirm that Henry died from complications in his lungs, possibly from all the smoke from the fire. After Henry's death, Ed became his mother's sole taker. Augusta's influence continued to dominate his life, and her death in 1945 left Ed completely alone. It was at this point that his descent into madness fully began, setting the stage for his horrifying crimes. On the night of November 16th, 1957, a local hardware store owner named Bernice Warden went missing from Plainfield, Wisconsin. Her disappearance sparked immediate concern. The police soon learned that she had last been seen in the company of Ed Gein. When authorities went to search Ed's house, they discovered the scene far more grotesque than anyone could have imagined. Upon forcefully entering Gein's home, investigators were confronted by a nightmarish array of human remains. They found skulls fashioned into bowls, human skin used to upholster furniture, faces turned into masks, and a collection of body parts meticulously preserved and displayed. It became clear that Ed Gein wasn't just a killer, he was a grave robber, desecrating the dead and turning their bodies into macabre trophies. Ed's house was a grotesque shrine to his twisted psyche. There were women's genitals kept in jars, human bones used to make cutlery, and lamps made from human skin. The horror didn't stop with the discovery of Bernice Warden's body, which was found butchered and hung upside down like an animal in Gein's shed. When arrested, Ed Gein was initially calm, almost detached from the gravity of his crimes. During his interrogation, he confessed to the murder of Bernice Worden, explaining that he had been obsessed with her for years. But it was clear that her death was only part of a much darker pattern. Gein revealed that he had been robbing graves in local cemeteries, exhuming bodies of recently buried women who resembled his late mother. His aim? To craft a women's suit, a way to become a woman himself. At the Plainfield police station, he told police that he hoped to dress up in their skin and pretend to be a female in order to live out his fantasies of embodying his mother's ideal woman. If only trans lives would have been accepted back then, Ed Gein would have had an easier time and not had to kill those people to get what he wanted. Let the trans be themselves. Trans lives matter. The LGBT matter. He was afterwards booked into the Washoe County Jail. Ed Gein was charged with the murder of Bernice Worden, but the trial that followed was anything but ordinary. This murder charge was in the first degree. During his arraignment, Judge Robert Gulmer requested that the case be presented to a grand jury to confirm that Gein would be charged with this murder charge. Judge Gulmer also ordered that Gein remain in custody for the time being. After being tied to a criminal probe within the state of Wisconsin, the community was shocked. He had also allegedly been responsible for the death of another woman, tavern owner Mary Hogan. Prosecutor Warren McDonald presented the case to a grand jury, seeking to indict Gein for the murders. That is exactly what happened. The grand jury confirmed the charge of first-degree murder for the death of Bernice Worden and indicted him on an extra charge of second-degree murder for the death of Mary Hogan. He was suspected to have killed 16 more people, but there was not enough evidence to charge him for that. After undergoing a psychiatric evaluation, doctors declared Gein legally insane. They determined that Gein was suffering from schizophrenia and psychotic delusions, rendering him incapable of understanding the nature of his crimes. Judge Gulmer would then grant Gein the option to have an insanity defense in his trial. Therefore, Gein changed his plea to not guilty by reason of insanity. He was then transferred to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. Gein finally went to trial in November 1968 at the Washoe County District Court. Due to this case, involving an insanity defense, a new prosecutor was appointed to it, Albert Seltzer. There was also a change in the defense for the same reason. Gein was first represented by attorney Arthur Failer, but would then get a new one, William Belter, who had experience in working insanity cases. He was ultimately found not guilty by reason of insanity and was committed to a mental institution. After a final judgment by Judge Gulmer, Gein would spend the rest of his life in the Mendoza State Hospital in Madison, where he remained until his death in 1984. He died from cancer. Ed Gein's crimes have haunted the public imagination ever since. His gruesome acts inspired several infamous characters in horror fiction, most notably Norman Bates from Psycho, Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Gein's story is the fact that, At his core, he was not a bloodthirsty monster, but a man so twisted by his upbringing, loneliness, and delusions that he believed his horrific actions were not only justified but necessary. Ed Gein is dead, but the legacy of his crimes continues to shape our collective psyche, a reminder of the darkness that can take root in the most isolated corners of the human mind. To this day, Ed Gein is buried at the Plainfield Cemetery, where a private funeral was held for him on July 30th, just a few days after he died. His confirmed and suspected victims also had their funerals held at this cemetery. They are buried there with him. Their funerals occurred 6 days after their deaths had been discovered, and after the Washoe County Coroner's Office released their bodies. This coroner's office had taken in Gein's brother as well, whom is also buried with him at the cemetery. Lastly, 2 other people who are buried with him are his parents. Thank you for listening to this episode of Strawberry Ink. If you'd like to learn more about Ed Gein and other true crime stories, be sure to follow us on social media. Most of my pages are Strawberry Ink, mainly my TikTok page. Check out our latest episodes. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and have a good day.